So fun fact, do you know that there's 1.1% millionaires out there in the world? Own about $156 trillion. And apparently that is almost 46% of the world's wealth. My goodness. It's incredible. 1.1% own 46%. And that leaves the 98.9% people to fight for the 54% left. I mean, it's like you starting a race already handicapped with both legs cut off, and you have to run with those with two legs. Like that is a race that is gonna take a lot of persistence, endurance, and of course supernatural intervention. But supernatural intervention is all here. We've got the power. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Salison. So trying to spice it up a bit, changing locations once a while. So last week I spoke about living within your means, and I gave 5 simple tips on how to make sure you live within your means. Being content with what you have, doing what makes you happy, avoid impulse buying, do not borrow to keep up appearances, and of course avoid keeping up appearances. Basically, it just talks about being self-conscious and being happy when you don't have to deal with low self-esteem or satisfying and pleasing people around you to feel complete. Then you will definitely be able to live within your means. So now this week we're supposed to talk about generosity. It's one of my favorite topics. Those who know me personally know that I'm a CFO, I'm in finance. Spending must always be with the return on investment. That's how it works for me. There must always be a value proposition. What is the opportunity cost? Why do we need to spend? It's funny because actually this weekend a friend asked me, I hope when it comes to giving offering in church and being generous, you are not all about the budget. I was like, well, I am actually. I have a 10% dedicated to that. And then of course, the Holy Spirit touches my heart. God bless my soul. I give more than the 10%, but I have my amount dedicated to God as part of my faith. So it's still within the budget, but I have that cap, and for sure, as I said, when I'm inspired, I give more. But people it's normal to think that way, because if I'm quite structured with my spend, you might think that I'm not too generous. And of course, I have also my cap for my bucket for giving. So when I give, I don't really go with the rules of what's the return on investment, because I give from the heart, because I know that the person needs it. I don't give when people just come because they want money to just go have fun and stuff. Sometimes I can do that just because I'm in a good mood and want to be generous, but I really like to give to those who are in need, because I feel that is touching the core, that is really making a difference in the life of people. So before I go to this week's topic on generosity, I want to just share with you some books that I'm reading. My journey to wealth creation really skyrocketed in 2020 when I started deep diving into several books that I realized most of the self-made people have either written or read. And before I started today's session, I did a bit because I wanted to have a little more facts to share with. So fun fact, do you know that there's 1.1% millionaires out there in the world? Like, my word, we've got so many people in the world, and it's only 1.1% adults that are millionaires. I'm like, my goodness. It's either the masses are not doing something right, it's either the 1.1% are not sharing, it's either the educational system is just completely screwed up, or it's, I don't know, I really cannot explain. And of course, my goal, as I said, I want to be a multi-millionaire, I want to be a billionaire, I want to be within the 1.1, and even in the 1.1 in the star ranking. I want to be on top, and I'm on that journey. And of course, if you're following me and you're taking conscious actions on my trainings, you will join me on this journey, because the goal is not to be there alone. It's to make sure that we move from this 1.1% to at least, if we, I mean, to be realistic, let's start with 5%, and then 10%, 15%, 20%, till it's like a 50-50. But come on, 1.1%, and they own about $156 trillion. And apparently that is almost 46% of the world's wealth. My goodness. It's incredible. 1.1% own 46%. And that leaves the 98.9% people to fight for the 54% left. I mean, it's like you starting a race already handicapped with both legs cut off, and you have to run with those with two legs. Like that is a race that is gonna take a lot of persistence, endurance, and of course supernatural intervention. But supernatural intervention is all here. We've got the power, and that's why I want to start with some books that I read, and that is helping me on my journey. So I'm gonna start. First book I read, well, I read loads of books when I was young. I like all these animated books and everything. Then I moved to the romantic books, then I moved to the scary books, and then I just stopped reading for a while, and then I just built that mindset that, oh, I don't like reading anymore, oh, I'm too busy to read, and then I just wanted series and movies and stuff. Till 2020, I just got that snap, like, come on girl, if you want to change your life, you got to do something different. So I started studying. What are they doing? What is Bill Gates doing? What is Elon Musk doing? So the first one, I start with this Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm sure most of you have heard of him. He's a multi-millionaire, mainly into real estate, making a lot of money on real estate. And he talks about good debt, bad debt. He talks about how he watched his biological dad, who was a poor dad, fall into the system, you know, the standard system of working, saving, retiring, and living off your retirement. And he watched his dad's friend, who was a rich dad, talk about how to save, how to invest, how to make sure your money works for you. And he basically picked the side that he wanted. He didn't want to be in the same bubble as his dad. He wanted to have the life of his rich dad. So he followed the steps and the guidance given by his rich dad till he became rich himself. And this book, honestly, it was, I would say, a mind-changing book for me. It transformed my perception of my life. Of course, I always had the dream that one day my husband and I mean, we had our vision, doing something social, helping the community, making an impact. But when I read this book, I realized it is important to not be caught up in the bracket of working all your life and just waiting for your retirement fund to live. Because with that, your quality of life after retirement is definitely going to fall. I realized I needed to make sure that my savings starts to work for me, becomes capital, and that capital is used for investment, and my investment works for me, and my money just continues to work for me till I get to the point where I have that financial autonomy. Trust me, with the Rich Dad Poor Dad, my husband and I, we did our first flip on real estate, and we made more than 50,000 euro profit. Yes. It is important. And of course, I mean, it wasn't just reading. We also had to pay for training on investment on real estate. We spent almost 950 euros. And at that point, we're like, oh my goodness, that's too expensive. Should we pay that much? But when we look at the profits we made after, because of course the training didn't give us all the tools, but we did our own research, education, learned a bit more till we did our flip. But one key thing is you need to invest in education. Invest in learning, reading, getting more facts, getting more information, because that is the only way you are going to know and make the difference. You cannot do what you do not know. You cannot change what you do not know. That's why education is key. So I recommend you to read The Rich Dad Poor Dad, understand what the 98.9 people are doing and what the 1.1% are doing, which is the rich dad, and try to pick your side. Do you want to be caught in the usual rat race of working 9 to 5, growing up constantly working till retirement and living off your retirement? Or do you want to do what the rich dad did and make sure that you start saving, you start investing, you start limiting your spend? There's so many useful tips in this book. I'm not going to go into details. Maybe in other videos I'll do more reviews on each book that I've read, but I just want to already incite you to read The Rich Dad Poor Dad. Just gonna show it one more time for those who haven't seen it before. So this is how it looks like. You can get the audiobook on YouTube. You can buy the book on Amazon. You can even download, I think there's the free PDF. You can download it. It's in English, it's in French, it's in Portuguese, I believe. So check it out and start your journey. Read, it would really transform your mind. He's written other books, but you can start off with this. So I did The Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then after that I did, ta-da, The Richest Man in Babylon. I work in an amazing company that invests in me and constantly educates me to make me better as an individual, as a manager, as a leader, and as a finance expert. And also I am constantly developing. But then I decided in 2022 I need to wake up and start also on my personal journey on self-development. It's time to reignite that fire that I had with my husband back in 2020 on our financial autonomy journey, to move a bit out of our comfort zone, because we had been, for 2 years trying to settle in a new country, adapt to the care, to our baby, had a new baby coming up and everything. And when I moved on to my maternity, I picked up my second book, The Richest Man in Babylon. And this book, it's amazing. I've had it for 15 years. It was gathering dust till I decided to blow off the dust. And all I found was treasures, a lot of rich financial treasures. It's a must read, I have to say, must read. Try and get it online, Amazon, download, go to YouTube. I think there's an audiobook on there. Try to get this book. It's really good. One who gave me this book is called Jude. And it's been a while. We've been out of touch for years, but in case he gets to see my YouTube channel, thanks Jude for this book. It's really been a life changer. Some few tips. So it talks about paying yourself first, saving 1/10 of your salary, so a 10%. I propose 20%. That's my model. It's quicker, it's faster, it takes a lot of dedication. But the Richest Man in Babylon said a minimum of 10%, paying yourself first. It talks about controlling your spend, your expenditure. It talks about making sure that you let your money work for you, and the money of the money work for you. So it's like your money makes children, and the children of your money makes more children. Your grandchildren make great-grandchildren, till you're constantly having cash flow, that is abundance of cash flow, because your money is working for you while you sleep. This money working for you round the clock. And of course, it's the same also spoken in The Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then it talks about save your capital. Make sure that you don't lose your capital. And he spoke about several tips, like don't go asking advice on real estate from someone who sells oranges and has never done real estate. Don't go asking for advice on trading and on stocks and bonds from someone who does real estate, because that's not their expertise. So basically the book says make sure that when you take advice, you take it from the experts. Don't go to people who would give you ideas of what they think. Oh, I think crypto is the next ish, but they don't even invest in crypto. Oh, I think you should go into real estate because I heard, because I've seen, but they've never experienced it, and they'll give you the advice. Make sure that you only invest 25% of your amount in real estate because of yada yada yada, but they've done nothing about it. Just be smart enough to take your advice from people who are experts. It also talks about ensuring your future income. So making sure that you're investing and making sure that there is always that safety net, and also increase your ability to earn. Talking about learning new trades and advancing in your skills and your competencies. It's really smart. You know, the Babylonians were known to be a small city that from one day to the other became one of the richest, and they had fortunes, and people had to come over to Babylon to learn how they made their fortunes, and they were just full of smart people, full of intelligent people that knew the value of money. And it also talks about never insure the debt of someone, because sometimes people make silly decisions. You guarantee for someone who you are not even sure is going to be able to pay their debt, and you put your head down to say, if they don't pay the debt, I'm going to pay. Well, sorry for you, because sometimes if you warranty and you guarantee for the wrong person, you're going to put yourself in debt. You will lose sleep because of that person. So just be careful. Read this book, Richest Man in Babylon. It's a must read. And of course, after that, I did the audiobook Think and Grow Rich, and I'm reading it again. And this book talks about mindset. It talks about how you need to have that financial vision. You need to dream, because if you don't dream, all those who achieved something, all those who made a difference. Bill Gates, before Microsoft came into being, he dreamt it, he saw it. Mark Zuckerberg, before Facebook came into being, he dreamt it, he saw it. Steve Jobs, before Apple became the biggest ish, he dreamt it, he saw it. Elon Musk, before Tesla and all that, he dreamt it, he saw it. Warren Buffett, before he became one of the biggest and toppest investor, he dreamt it, he saw it. It all starts here, having that mental picture, dreaming about it. It also talks about how you need to make sure that whatever you think about or what you want to achieve, you need to decide on what you're going to give in return. So if it's wealth you want, if it's health you want, if it's educational, wisdom, whatever it is that you want, you need to think about it, you need to dream it, you need to visualize it, and then you need to talk about what you're going to give in return. Because at the end of the day, life is a give and take. It's all about generosity. So if you want to be wealthy, because at the end you want to help your community, you need to have that, you need to say it out, what you want. Like for me and my family, our goal is to build that social system, help the community. So we want that financial autonomy. And that's why we're doing what it takes to get to that point. And then once you do that, you take the action. You need to write it down. You need to take the action. And then, of course, there are a lot of other rich content here. So I'm reading it again as a refresher. And I'll advise you to also read it. Read this book. It's really good. Think and Grow Rich. And the one that I read recently, also, The Secret. So actually, this book was an eye-opener because I'm a Christian. I can't say it enough. Of course, everyone is entitled to what they believe. So the book talks about the universe. I relate it to God. You can relate it to Allah. You can relate it to Buddha, to whichever God you believe in. But I relate it to God and to Jesus Christ. And it's a very insightful book. It talks about so many key principles about the law of attraction. How you need to make sure that you constantly think positively. The brain is not able to differentiate between negation, like when things are negative. So when you say, I don't want to fall, the brain captures fall. It doesn't see the I don't want to. So it's good to think about the positive thing. So instead of thinking of falling, you think of I want to stand, and the brain will recognize the stand. I want to run, and the brain will think of the run. So avoid thinking of negative things, just think of the positive things, and the brain will capture that. And it talks about how love is the fundamental force, the core emotion to drive your success, to drive your achievement, to drive you attracting the right things to you. Because everything is a wave, it's an energy, and it's bounded by love. It talks about giving, how it is important to give. It talks about asking. The Bible, it says in Matthew 7:7, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open unto you. I'm not here to preach, but this book it hits on it, and I'm like, wow, the Bible even spoke about that, and I ignored it. I had to go to this book to get that wake-up call. So read this book. In case you say, I'm not a Christian, I don't want to read it, it's not religiously based. It just talks about the fundamental core of law of attraction. But the Christians can relate to it with the Bible. The Muslims, you might probably find some content in the Quran in here. And for all the other believers, you might find something to relate to it with the universe and all. But for me as a Christian, I found most of the messages in the Bible in here. It's a good book, full of information, full of insight. The law of attraction. You need to be able to call things into existence. Honestly, I called so many things. My husband, before I even read this book, I'd called them into existence. Everyone who knows me knows how I got my husband. He's someone that I had dreamt about, visualized way back when I was in senior high school. And it took several years, I think 8 to 10 years before we met. When we met, it just went like this because I knew he was the one I had been visualizing and dreaming about. So those are some of the books I would like you to read to continue this journey with me. And now to the topic of today, giving, generosity. So I'm gonna make it short and snappy. When you throw a ball, the same energy with which you throw the ball is the same force that comes back to you. When you give, life is a scale, and there needs to be a balance. When you give, the scales are unturned, and it takes someone to receive to balance the scale. But then when that person receives, another imbalance is created, and someone else needs to give to create the balance. Just a simple analogy. So when you give, you start that cycle of giving. Why do they say there's more blessing in giving than receiving? Because when you give, you create that space for someone to receive. And when someone receives, because an imbalance is created, there's a high chance that it's going to come back to you, but even with the higher force, the higher fold. You don't give 1,000 and then get 1,000 back. It doesn't work that way. But you might give 1,000 and you might get something worth more than 10,000. And when you give, you don't give expecting to receive. It doesn't work that way. You give out of love. You give selflessly because you know that someone is in need. As I say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. When you give selflessly, generously, you open in the law of attraction. You open that force, that unbreakable force, when it's given out of love, that it comes rushing back bountifully onto you. It's like sowing a seed. When you sow a seed in the soil and you water it, giving is watering. You water it, you water it. Guess what? You're going to have a blossom. Little plant is going to blossom out and it's going to grow into a big tree. And when you have that big tree and it generates fruits, you have endless fruit. You sow one seed of apple, you get a tree that gives you more than 20 apples. That's how it works. I mean, it's just the law of nature. Honestly, there are certain things that are principles You don't need to be religiously based. You don't need to be a philosopher. You don't need to understand so much to make it work. It's just the law of nature, like gravity. If you stand on your ceiling and you jump, you're definitely gonna fall, unless you're working with the technology that allows you to float. But if you don't have that technology, then the law of nature says gravity is supposed to pull you down. It's as simple as that. Just like we have the law of gravity, that's the same. We have the law of giving. When you give, you receive, but you receive more than you give. When you give, you do not give expecting to receive. Because you don't go just say, I'm going to jump out to test the gravity, because it works, it would happen. When you give, you just give out of love. When you give out of love, you will receive. And as I define in my 50, 20, 20, 10, you need to define 10%. Just have 10% to give, because there are a lot of people who need help out there. So that 10% you can give your offering, your tithe, depending on your religious belief. You can give to your family, you can support your friends, you can support those in need. Just have a bucket to pour, to water the plants of others. It's gonna come back to you with a lot of blessings and a lot more than you gave. So that's all for today. Next week, I'm going to do a review. There's a series on Netflix that my friend drew my attention to. I would like to do a review on this series. It's called How to Get Rich. Actually, I realized that this series kind of hits on some of the topics, the points that I've already started off on my training. It talks about people, the life of people, rich people, or some who are getting rich, who are not budgeting, not saving, not investing. So I will talk a bit more into this series next week. So stay tuned, and maybe you can already start watching the series so that you can put in your comments on what your views are on this series when I do the review. So that's all for this week. Remember, the goal is to be 1% better than the day before. We are on this journey to financial freedom, to financial autonomy. And the only way to get there is to do things differently. Is to take that journey, to take those steps, to transform our life, to learn, to educate ourselves, to be better, and to have that technical knowledge. So make sure that you're taking those steps. Work on your mindset. If you've not watched the video, go watch it. It's the second video I released on this channel. Work on your mindset. Start preparing your budget. Start splitting your budget consciously. Start ensuring that you work on yourself to feel sufficient, to be sufficient, to not have that low self-esteem and feel like you need to fill a void or to please those around you. And of course, be generous. Give. Start the cycle of giving to make sure that you open up the windows of heaven, as it says in the Bible, for the blessings, the bountiful blessings of God. And of course, spend the time to read the books, The Secret, Think and Grow Rich, The Richest Man in Babylon, and of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's all for today. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. So I'm currently at 73 subscribers. I want to hit 100 subscribers this week. So please share with your friends. Let's spread the news. Let's get as many viewers as possible. Remember, the goal is to make sure that we have more than 1.1% rich people out there, millionaires out there. We can do it. So we've got to make sure that we spread the news. Let's get more people, conscious about how to make money and how to invest and how to make sure their money works for them. Without much ado, I say, Biddy Bam, your girl Allison, I'm out.